In today's episode of Power of the Mind, we explore depression. We talk about where it comes from, what it is. We ask ourselves, is depression something that is more prominent now than it has been in the past? Or has it always been around and we're just starting to notice it more? In general, we just discuss what is depression, where does it come from, and what can we do about it. Hope the episode is of some use to you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Power of the Mind with Greg Struve from Granite Mountain Behavioral Health. And last episode, we were talking a lot about depression, and realized it took us down several winding paths, which we tend to do when you and I get talking, but wanted to focus on, maybe just one or two little topics. And of course, that'll probably take us who knows where, but I'll give you a second. Tell them about yourself real quick, just so they remember.
I'm Greg Struve. I am an owner and one of the therapists at Granite Mountain Behavioral Healthcare, which is a addiction treatment center in Prescott, Arizona, with 118 beds, and has an outpatient program with about 200 clients a week, give or take. So relatively large, and we're happy to do what we do and
great
service the community. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Good service. So, and I know a lot of what you do is, with drug and alcohol abuse, which probably spurs on depression or is spurs from depression.
Both of those things are true.
Yeah. So I just, let's just throw out a quick topic on depression, which I'm now learning is probably going to be an 87-part series. So, but one of the questions that came up, and we just took a short break and jumped back in.
Right.
But one of the questions that came up from one of the people that were observing in the room, you had talked about on the previous podcast, the kind of that trick question of when I asked.
We like to call it the magic question because it makes us feel less tricky. As therapists, you don't want to be. It's okay. It is probably tricky, kind of a trick question, but it makes sense. We like to let ourselves off the hook.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you're depressed or you're angry, who is the person that it's mostly affecting aside from yourself? And it's usually whoever they reveal is the person who they're upset with, as a general rule, right?
Yeah, because if we think about the idea of depression, one understanding of depression is that it is anger turned inward. If you have biological depression and I medicate you, if I give you some medication, it goes away, and it goes away quick.
Right.
A couple of weeks, and you're in a totally different zone. It's really, really easy to see. If you have psychological depression, the biological interventions will help a lot of the time, but there's a lot left over. And in those situations, we usually have anger turned inward. And so that question of, okay, who in your life is most affected by your depression? The answer is usually who you're angry at. That's our trick question, the magic question.
So, and that made perfect sense to me, but somebody had mentioned, what if that person is yourself?
Oh, such a good question.
We heard that.
Most of the time when I'm getting that question from someone, you're going to talk about a person who's pretty nice and pretty kind. With great frequency, if I view myself as someone who is agreeable, I am going to struggle to deal with anger that I have toward other people, and I'm going to use myself as a surrogate. So if somebody tells me that the anger they have, the person that they're angriest at is themselves, the one most affected is themselves, first of all, that's absolutely true. And it's true for everybody. You get that answer a lot when you ask the quote-unquote magic question or trick question.
Right.
You get that answer a lot, and the reality is there's usually a second or third or fourth person who is going to be impacted as well. It's very common for that person to be somebody who I don't want to deal with my anger at. And there's a lot of reasons why I might not want to deal with the anger. I mentioned in the last episode that it might not be safe, but another one is it might be incongruent with my definition of who I am. One example would be I can think of a mother who had a special needs child that was very, very high needs, special needs. When we get into the depression and the question comes up, who's most affected? Well, me. I'm most affected. Who's number two? Well, my daughter. Well, all right, so now as a clinician, I have some interesting information. I always operate from the assumption that my information could be wrong. Nothing is true 100% of the time with human beings. So it could be that she's not angry about her daughter's situation. And that situation is in almost every respect unfair. This was a person who had had a career and really enjoyed her professional functioning. But because of her situation with her child, she chose, she felt obligated. She didn't have to make the decision to give up her career, but she believed that that was the right choice given her circumstances, given her upbringing, given her belief systems, given how she was functioning in the world. For her, it was kind of the only possibility. And there she sat in my office, very, very depressed and inwardly very, very angry about this circumstance, which is, in some respects, pretty unfair, pretty hard. So that's an example of somebody who, when I have the question, when the first response is, the person I'm maddest at is me, what that usually means is the person I'm angry at is somebody who I don't have the capacity to deal with that anger directly to myself. A lot of depression is layer upon layer of belief that may or may not be true. If I lie to myself enough, I'm going to feel empty and I'm going to feel a sense of down. And that is going to be part of the process, is uncovering those lies that I have told myself.
Right. I look at people that are, we're reading a book and at work, and it deals with somebody who was just really dealt a bad hand. And I mean, probably one of the worst, and just abused as a child, and dealing with his mom and trying to protect mom. And, there was a point in his life where he really just hated himself, and he was really angry at himself because of what he had become, and he wasn't changing. And he didn't know how to change. And it was, so that was the person he was most, he was depressed because of who he was. And, there are factors around him that he needed to address and to change. Right. But, what do you tell somebody who's like, they find themselves in that rut, or they find themselves that they are.
Yeah, good question.
I'm not happy with where I'm at in life. I'm not happy with what we're doing or what I'm doing, or, how do I move forward? How do I put one foot in front of another tomorrow? And, and it's not my mom, it's not my dad, it's not my spouse, it's me. Right. How do you deal with that? Because everybody else is fine around you, but it's you. It's you. Well,
and that's ultimately, the answer for depression generally is inside. Because although something might not be fair in your life, there's often very little you can do about it. There are a lot of us who get dealt a bad hand.
Right.
And I think actually there is the perception out there that people who are, for example, wealthy or born in the family system, that there's people who don't get dealt a bad hand. And I've not seen that. Yeah. I think pretty much everybody gets dealt varying degrees of difficulty, and we don't see it in each other because people don't walk up to their friends and their family and their coworkers. They don't walk up to people at work and say, "Hi, I'm Greg, and by the way, I was brutally traumatized from the age of 6 to 8 by a stepfather. But here I am." Right? No, we're just going to keep moving along, going to cheerleading practice, doing playing sports, and just doing our lives, and that's what we do as human beings. Getting back on toward the question, though, from a practical perspective, what are some things I can do when I am having a rough day or when depression comes up? There are a couple of pieces that come to mind. The material on Instagram is actually pretty helpful as far as I can tell for depression. There's a lot of really worthwhile tips. There's a lot of therapists on Instagram. There's a lot of different material on. For all of its foibles, social media does have some really good material. We were talking in the last episode about how much more knowledge there is about mental health in general. But I saw something on Instagram about affirmations. And affirmations are surprisingly helpful. Telling myself I'm okay the way I am. Things are going to be fine the way they are. My life who I am and how I am are fine and appropriate, and I'm good enough just the way I am. Those sorts of affirmations can be really, really helpful. The other thing I'll say is that we don't know how to put in a legal pill, we don't know how to put material to release as much serotonin as is released when you do something nice for someone else.
Really?
Yeah, an act of service, particularly an act of selfless service, an act of service where you have no hope of getting anything out of it in return, creates a really powerful neurochemical response. So that's volunteering and finding a place where I can be of service and be of use is a really strong, powerful antidote for depression. One variety of depression is the variety that comes from a felt sense of meaninglessness. And the capacity to serve and be of use to others is a great antidote to that. Another thing to look at if I'm trying to figure out depression in a here and now way, one surprisingly impactful element of it is the diet, the food that we eat. I'll have a lot of folks who are depressed, and I'll make them go to a naturopath and get their blood tests done if they can afford it. I find a lot of times if I have a middle-aged male client coming to me and telling me that he's depressed, when I send him to a naturopath, his testosterone levels will be low. For whatever reason, that just happens a lot these days. Mm-hmm. And the naturopath supplements the testosterone, and they quit coming, which is great. It's an odd profession where I'm trying to fire my clients all the time, right? So that's another example of something I can do. Sugar seems to, for some people, be really closely related to depression. So cutting out sugar in the form of cane sugar, the normal sugar that's in everything, as well as white bread, white rice, I can't remember, there's 5 different white things. White sugar, white rice.
Flour, probably. White
flour is the other one. Well, you just cut out about a third of the grocery store. Just boom, right there. When you knock out white flour, white sugar, white rice, white bread. I feel like there's one more, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But that change dietarily for some people results in a really significant shift in their mood.
I will tell you, I have a daughter who is, she's just really working on herself, and she's, I thought she was great before, but it's really I just want to be happier, and she's doing a lot of self-help stuff, and she's gone completely vegan. She's, clean food, and she's like, my mood is better. I'm happier. I can deal with things on a better level. And it wasn't as if she was depressed before, but it was just, she can handle the bumps in the road a little bit better, where, she was one of those kids that were, something bad happened. It was just, or she worried a lot about stuff, but she's like, she just feels so much better, and she has more of a, she's journaling a little bit. So
that's
those
really
little things
helpful.
that are, just little things, but made such a huge, well, not little, because she's eating tofu. So I don't,
God bless her.
God
what
bless
can
her.
you do?
People got to eat tofu. She brought me something today, and she's like, look.
You know what? You want to know a secret?
Yeah.
I really like tofu.
What does it taste like?
Oh, it can be done when it's cooked right and done really well, like in a wok, with some decent sauce attached to it. I mean, it is really good.
Bacon, probably.
Oh, I love bacon too. I wonder if you wrap bacon in tofu, I wonder if that causes like a collapse, like some sort of
the world shifts.
Yeah,
if you do
I wonder
that.
if that's like
I think you can do it.
Yeah, bacon wrapped in tofu would be
I'm gonna ask her.
Yeah, it shouldn't work.
Yeah,
shouldn't be allowed.
She'll do bacon.
It'd be good though.
Yeah, but she's happier. She's really, and she's cut out all the chemicals, and she's on a much just happier.
There are folks who are wired in a way that biologically they are sensitive to such things. Mm-hmm. So I do send, again, when I have clients who are of the means to do so, I will send them to a naturopathic doctor to get their blood levels drawn and to find out what their allergies are, and food sensitivities as well. An allergy is a full-blown reaction to a food. You can also have sensitivities to food. Sometimes the natural eating folks can take things a little far, in my experience, but it very rarely hurts, and it very rarely decreases somebody's mood, and it very rarely makes treatment harder for them. So it's a nice thing for treatment. You brought up the next thing I was going to say, which was journaling.
Yeah.
So our brains are really interesting. We have, as far as I can tell, we have some sort of nebulous area where concepts sit around, but they're not fully formed. And then out of that bubbles up the words and the languaging that we use. Our depression and our anxiety tend to sit mostly in this realm of felt experience. So for a lot of people, they'll report a tightness in their chest before they have any anxious thoughts. And that tightness in their chest is kind of this general sense of non-well-being. When I journal, I take what's in there and I put it onto paper, and it forces it to go from what we might think of as the right brain over to the left brain, right? From a concept or from sort of a generality, from just a nebulous out there thing into something more concrete. Mm-hmm. And so there's something about the act of journaling that can be quite helpful. And the other thing that is really helpful on a practical level for depression is to have somebody safe who you can relate to. Social connection is one of the most basic and primitive ways in which human beings are able to regulate their mood. Mm-hmm. It really, really helps to have somebody around who you can talk to, who's safe for you.
So we talked about journaling.
Yeah.
Having someone to talk to or being able to really confide in. Maybe talking to a homeopath or finding out exactly, if you've got some food allergies or like you
Mm-hmm.
said with men, like a low testosterone. And the other one was there another one? Did I miss one?
Yes, there was, but I don't remember it either. So, oh well.
Batman probably doesn't remember. He's over there. Train of thought.
Yeah.
But it was, self-talk. That's what I was going to talk about.
Yes, working on my self-talk. Yeah, with the affirmations. That was the other one.
Affirmations. And I was that's funny, I blocked it out because that's what I wanted to talk to you about was, for me, I've always, I'm very fascinated on how lazy the brain is. And it'll really just do what's comfortable. And if you tell it that it's today you're having a good day and today you're happy and today this is going to happen, your brain just goes, oh, okay. And that works for me a lot. It's like, today's going to be a great day. It's going to be awesome. And I tell my kids that because they're like, oh, today's going to be a terrible day. Yeah, with that kind of attitude, mister, it's going to be that way. But, I mean, do you believe that if I, tell myself enough or your brain kind of absorbs, what you tell it to do and it's going to start doing what you tell it to do? Or
Yeah, there's not much question about that as far as my experience goes with clients and myself personally. The mind, your brain is wired to not care if you're happy. Your brain is wired to keep you alive. And the best way to keep you alive is to be hypersensitive to danger and to find what's wrong in any given situation and to be alert for what might go wrong and to prepare as much as you can for what might go wrong, which is kind of depressing, innately.
right.
And there are times in your life when that's probably a good idea, if you're going into some sort of battle. But most of us aren't doing that most of the time. Most of us, the challenge we have is we have these bodies that are wired to keep us safe and alive, and we're pretty much safe most of the time.
Right.
As a general rule. We live in a world that is safe, maybe too strong of a word, but certainly safer than it's ever been. And as a result, now we have to figure out, well, how do I take this and turn it into some sort of sense of happiness or well-being?
Right. And
the way I talk to myself can play a huge role in that. It is innate to not talk very nicely to myself. Mm-hmm. It is built in as far as I can see. And so consciously, we can move it in a different direction if we choose to, and that tends to be pretty effective, although it does take some time. Some folks want to see results right away with that, but I find it takes 15 or 20 days with a commitment toward affirming myself and affirming some specific element or part of my life. The exception to that is when it's used as a tool for denial, as a tool to run away from the truth. And there's some sort of truth in my life that I have to face, even though I really, really don't want to.
And so you'll keep just talking yourself out of it or talking yourself away from it?
that can happen sometimes. Sometimes people will come to see me and they'll say, I tried an affirmation about this and it didn't work. I say, well, affirmations work until they don't, until the resentment bottles up and clogs up the system, and then it has to be dealt with. Right. People, as a general rule, when somebody comes to see a clinician, they do it because there's what's called an exogenous factor in their life. And that's a $10 word for basically there's something that happened that they don't know how to, the tools that they have aren't working to take care of it and to handle it. So everything was fine until my dad died. And then after that, now I do not know what to do. I remember when Tiger Woods' dad died, God bless him, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a guy who had built his life around his relationship with his father, and his father's gone, and he very publicly came apart.
Right.
So
yeah,
we'll
I'll
see.
get to see that.
Yeah.
Well, and it kind of would lead me to kind of shine the light on you then. So you've got somebody who, I'm the one who I'm depressed at or I'm mad at.
Yeah.
And I've tried daily affirmations. I've tried going to the homeopath or getting blood work done. I've tried journaling. I've tried all of this. When is it time to call Greg? When is it time to pick up the phone and say, you know what, I can't do this?
I don't know. There's a lot of different takes on that question. First of all, when somebody has actually done all the things we just talked about, they've gone a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Most people really don't want to do all that stuff. A lot of times folks will turn to a professional before they've done that stuff. I would say if you've done that stuff and you're still struggling, a professional is a great option for you, and they're readily available these days with Zoom and the online material. I'm a fan of kind of jumping in that direction before it gets bad. Mm-hmm. Why do I see a mechanic? Ultimately, I can get on YouTube and find literally everything there is to know about my car.
Right.
Whatever car you have, the tools to fix it are on YouTube. You have to, on YouTube and at Napa, the hardware store, the auto parts store. But I pay a professional because I don't really, the professional has spent years and years fixing cars and helping, and can probably do it a little quicker. So I think that's probably the principal advantage of working with a mental health professional if you're in a difficult situation, is to just recognize that maybe somebody who has more time and experience with this might be able to help me get out of it a little faster.
Well, and it's, as you were talking about the mechanic, I remember the first time I met Linda, who you work with.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking about, just what you guys do and how, we can help kind of get your message out to people who may not, know about this. And she used the best story. And she said, we want people to call us, think of a burning house. If there's a little fire in the kitchen, you call us before the house is engulfed in flames, right? You call 911 before you're standing out front going, well, I don't know what to do now, but bring in the hose. But, she goes, we don't want you to get to that point where the house is engulfed in flames. And she said it so much better, but that really stuck with me when she was saying that. I was like, gosh, it's, when you think about the kids, it's one thing to be able to be in tune with yourself or whatever, and I can figure it out, or I know when I'm off. But as parents, to be able to see that in your child or where your child might be struggling, and, can we, before it's an engulfed home or the engine is blown up in the car.
Sure.
It's okay to seek help. It's okay to call somebody and to talk to somebody. It doesn't mean that your kid is, a monster or something. It's just sometimes kids need to talk to somebody, or there's something going on that you just, and it doesn't make you a bad parent. It means there's something going on. But, talking to her just really, I was like, wow, there's a lot of people that need to hear that message.
Oh, sure.
And so that was why it was so important for me to we've got to do this, and we've got to do, because it's, and you brought it up in a previous podcast that parents are afraid to say, oh, there's something wrong with my kid, because that's your fault, right? Mom and dad did it, obviously. But no, not necessarily. Yeah. So
no.
Yeah, I really want to see people really pick up that phone and are just, and you guys do Zoom now?
Oh, yeah. Everybody does. Well, not everybody, but almost everybody does Zoom. It will be a really significant step in the right direction for mental health to be able to do Zoom sessions. I was really surprised when I got in Zoom. I always assumed that the face-to-face would be super crucial. But the Zoom thing is really helpful for a lot of folks to be able to do this work from the comfort of their home, especially if you have anxiety or if you just are nervous about the idea or the prospect of therapy. I mean, it's pretty great. It works really, really well.
And so if I'm a parent or I'm somebody who is looking for help, we can just call you, and is it insurance based? Is it cash pay? How does stuff like that
with
work?
Granite Mountain, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, with Granite Mountain, we generally work with Medicaid. Our outpatient program is growing in terms of the number of insurances that it provides.
Okay.
And that's an option as well. So, they can pick up the phone and call Granite, or, there are a number of resources, whatever part of the world or the state the person might be in listening to this. That's why God made Google. Thank heavens for Google. We get on there, you type in whatever you're looking for. I will say too, not all mental health professionals are created equal. I can, if I try something and it doesn't seem like it's working, try a couple more. There's no reason to get hung up. I've had people say, I went to therapy, it didn't work for me.
Yeah,
so, well, tell me what happened with your therapist. He said this, and that.
I didn't like it.
Well, that wouldn't have worked for me either.
Right. So it's just, it's interesting to me. I would have always thought that it would have had to have been, a teacher recognized something. So we're going to call in a counselor who's going to recommend this. But it sounds like a parent can just pick up the phone, or a person can pick up the phone and say, I need help. And you're going to steer them in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's great. So again, went down a great rabbit hole, which I love. And I really do think, we've talked about a million times, we can talk about thousands of different topics, but I would like to kind of continue on the depression and anxiety and all that good stuff, and not good stuff, but all of that stuff. And just because it's interesting to me, and it's so, I want to learn how to, recognize that in people and to take it more seriously, but just to not just be that person that's like, smile, you're sad, stop being sad. Just, my kids would be like, Mom, you're never going to be that person, because I just, that's just how I was raised. If you're sad, don't be sad.
Right.
So if you're like me, don't be like that. It's okay to seek help. It's okay. If you see something, it's okay to.
Sure. And it's also okay to not be, to be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes, telling yourself not to be sad and make things work, that's a wonderful way to have a good life, unless it isn't, in which case then grab some help. But awesome. It's always worth. Sometimes I have folks who'll beat themselves up a little bit for being okay, because it's not particularly kids. Actually, I had a young lady not too long ago. I don't want to get too far off because I know we're wrapping up here, but a young lady not too long ago said, Greg, I'm just kind of boring. I'm okay.
It's not cool.
Just kind of boring. I don't have anything. I'm straight. That's not necessarily trendy these days.
No, it's not trendy.
And I just don't have anything exciting going for me. And that's actually part of why she was working. And part of her depression was just, I don't really feel like I'm that big of a deal.
Fit in with everybody. Yeah. Well, and that's what spurred my question to you when we first started talking about this was, is everybody more depressed now than they were 30 years ago, or is it just more trendy or more comfortable to talk about, and
I think the answer might be yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. As always, Greg Struve, the knowledgeable one, always gives me the right answer. Yeah, right. Yeah. But, well, thank you so much, because I know we'll find another hole to jump in next week. But I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. It's the best way to keep us on path is to send in some questions, and if you've got a question to ask, or you just want to, we've got Facebook posts going out there on Signals AZ, pop in a question. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what you want us to talk about, because I can take this guy on 1,000 different paths, and you just willingly follow me, and I really appreciate that.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for coming in, and thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.
If you have a question or something you'd like us to discuss here on Power of the Mind, we would love to hear from you. Our email address is stories, STORIES, @signalsaz.com. That's stories, STORIES, Signals, SIGNALS, AZ.com. Look forward to hearing from you.